let's get some rules that are prepared not by a bunch of lobbyists, but by a bunch of like learned legal thinkers who are not being lobbied. They're really trying to come up with the best rules. And when we in Arkansas adopt those, we'll have the same rules as Illinois and Texas and Alabama, and we'll be able to exchange with them more easily. And it's true. That's how it worked. So that is a source of, you may wonder, why would anybody write rules? Well, there you go. It's basically people trying to do good works. Let me say one more thing about why this is so important that there's no flags attached. I got started on this project to help a client. I'm a law professor kind of half-time. The rest of the time, private clients have come to the university, Chapman University where I work, and they say, hey, this Bell guy, he's doing interesting work, can he work on our project? So they give some money to the university, and I go work half-time for these private parties. And I was working in Honduras, because Honduras has this wonderful, interesting, groundbreaking ZA system, which I'll talk about in a minute. And early on, we discovered under the ZA system, an early proposal was by Romer, Paul Romer, the famous economist, and he wanted to start a charter city in Honduras. And his idea was, well, we need good rules. Let's use Canadian rules. Everybody likes the Canadians. They trust them. So, we'll just take the Canadian flag and put it down in Honduras and say, we're going to run this area of Honduras under Canadian law. That doesn't work. Maybe when you're from the north, I don't mean to sound too snide, but frankly, I see this going on. Maybe you're from the north, you think, come on, people, get on board. It's Canada. Canada's great. But guess what? When you're in Honduras, even though your country's a little effed up, frankly, you're proud. And you're not going to stomach having even the flag of Canada, much less the flag of Texas, flying over your soil. What are you going to do? You go to flag-free sources. That's better for the Hondurans and these other countries that want to have special jurisdictions for two reasons. One, it doesn't hack off everybody who sees a foreign flag over their soil. And two, it gives them better rules. I'm sure the Canadians have pretty good rules, but they were lobbied when they passed their rules. That's not going to happen with the rules we're using for Ulex. Let's move on. Let's look at some of the rules. How does this work? So, important thing to note in Ulex is I don't make up these rules because you should not trust me. Nobody should trust me. Turns out I am totally trustworthy. But you shouldn't trust me because I'm just one guy. I wouldn't trust one person, even Richard Posner or Hayek or Holmes, Justice Holmes, to come up with the rules. You want to use an august body. So these rules come from international trade. I didn't make them up, from UNICITRAL. It's a body of rules from a non-governmental source. Here is how you decide disputes in Ulex. I just borrowed this from another source. Each of the two parties, so you have a Spanish person and a German person, actually corporations, a Spanish corporation, German corporation. They have this big international deal and something goes south. Like the ship sinks en route when it's bringing the generators, and it's a big loss. And they have a fight over whose fault it is. The Spaniard says, I want a Spanish judge, and the German says, I want a German judge, and they're going to get nowhere. So they use this method. The Spanish person, the Spanish corporation says, we like that judge over there. She's an expert in international trade. She's not unfriendly to the Spanish, etc. She takes a vow to be fair to everybody, but we trust her. And the Germans say, we like that guy over there. And then those two judges, in the third step, choose the third judge on their panel. And now we look at that panel of judges. There's 3 judges at the end here, and we say, that's a fair panel. The parties kind of chose it. Neither party can say, oh, it's biased against me. Why do they do that? Because in international trade, you don't get to push people around. You have a bunch of smart, wealthy parties who are not going to stomach having some government body say, you have to go to this court and take our judges. They're just going to say, no. We're going to go to a country that's nicer, that treats us with more respect. So this is what parties who are equals do when it comes to forming a panel of judges. And let me say, by the way, we need to change this in American law, because what happens now in America when you have a suit against the government? Suppose I think my First Amendment rights are being violated. How do I defend my rights? I got to go to a government court. I got to sit in front of government employees and say, hey, government employees in government court, government's doing things wrong. How do you think I'm going to fare? I'm going to fare pretty much how people have fared in the United States for about 200 years. I'm going to see less and less liberty over time because it's a biased system. The people may be pure of heart. They may try to set aside the interests that they see every time they cash their paycheck where it says U.S. federal government. They're not going to be able to set that aside. The day we can choose the judges that decide our disputes against the government this way will be a much better day, and I'm working on that, but it's another project. Let's talk a little bit more about Ulex. So we figured out under Ulex, this is the default rule. Even if you hate that person over there you're litigating against, you don't want to talk to them, you'll be able to form a panel of judges. Now, it is a little expensive to have 3 judges. You might choose to have, you get along with the other party. You say, let's not be expensive here. We can reach an agreement. Let's choose 1 judge and keep it cheap. You could do that. But anyhow, let's go back to the default rules. You have your chosen judges. This is all procedure in Ulex. It uses pendulum arbitration, which again, I didn't come up with. Pendulum arbitration works like this. Well, first, let me tell you how it usually works in arbitration. One party says, you owe me $100 million. The other party says, I owe you 0. And the panel of arbitrators tends to kind of go for the middle. And the problem with that system is it drives people to extremes, right? Your incentive going into negotiations is to say, you owe me $11 billion. The other party says, you should be paying me. Because they want to get that sweet spot in the middle, they got to go for the extremes. That's no good. Pendulum arbitration is used in international trade. It actually is used in, you baseball fans might know they use this in baseball arbitration under the free agency system in the United States. It works like this. One party says, you should pay me this much. And the other party says, no. I should pay you much less. And the judges have to choose that or that. They don't get to split the difference. Judges are actually more constrained in this system. They don't get to make up their own remedies. They got to go with what one of the parties says. And that's awesome because it makes the party say, you owe me $100 billion. I owe you 0. And you do this through a series of iterations. And the parties look at each other's kind of remedies on the table. And the person who said 0 goes, whoa, I could lose this and have to pay them $100 million. That's terrible. Maybe 0 is a little too stingy. And maybe I owe you $1 million. And the person who asked for, $10 million said, oh, I could get 0 if I'm being unreasonable here. I better go down to maybe $8 million. And hopefully the parties they kind of, like a pendulum goes slowly to the middle, they kind of reach their own peace. Might not end up in the middle. It's not the judges kind of throwing a dart between the 2 estimates. It's the parties kind of talking it through and hopefully figuring it out for themselves so they never actually have to go to the arbitration. So that's pendulum arbitration. I didn't make it up. It's just a good mechanism I found. Ditto, loser pays. It's pretty much a rule everywhere in the world except America, China, France. Important countries, but still outnumbered by the rest of the world. And I go with the majority rules. And that's a majority rule. And that's our basic, you put it all together. I used my son's Legos to do this. You put it all together, you have this little basic building block for procedure. All right, so that's procedure. And that's mostly to give you a feel for how Ulex works, how the rules come about. That I go out with my shopping basket, like to a library, and I say, oh, there's a good procedural rule, there's a good one, and I just curate it. I don't make up the rules, I just collect them. Same thing with substance. This is a library shelf with the restatements of law, the restatements of torts. And these are produced by the American Law Institute. And again, it's learned judges and professors and lawyers, and they get together and they read a bunch of cases in tort law, in common law, tort law, and they say, let's sum this up and organize it and make it nice and neat. And this is where Ulex gets substantive rules. I need rules for torts. I just walk to the restatement of torts. Thank you very much. Put it in my basket. Ooh, I need contract law, ALI's restatement of contracts. I need corporate law, uniform law commissions, uniform commercial code, all this stuff. It's all there for the taking. You get it from the United Nations, from other sources, American Bar Association, the Uniform Law Commission, and the American Law Institute. These are all private bodies, and that's where I get my substantive rules for Ulex. All right, so we got procedure, we got substance, and I did mention there were these little meta rules. I'm not going to talk a lot about them, but basically you need like an ordinal ranking of rules so that one that's further down the ranking trumps the one that came earlier. And if there's a conflict, you need to resolve that. It's nothing fancy, but I came up with a few meta rules too. And you put it all together, and you have this kind of Lego-like building system. It's very simple, but you can build complex things out of it. And so that's what I want to give the world with Ulex. And I've started doing this through a GitHub. I probably have some coders here, and I've had to learn how to use GitHub. I've done some coding, but I wasn't on GitHub. It was a long time ago. But now you can find Ulex on GitHub. It's open source. So if you have a special jurisdiction, and you say, wow, I want to bring in the world's best common law rules to my jurisdiction, and I want my rules to harmonize with the rules of other special jurisdictions, these are the rules for me. And you just go to GitHub and download it. I'm up to 1.1 now, but you know how open source is. If you want to do your own version, you do your own version. I can't stop you. It's totally open source, not copyrighted. We're also doing a fundraiser now to support some research in this. It looks like we're up to, about 20,000 of our 50,000 goals, so that's good. So check out Indiegogo if you're interested. All right, so now we've heard about why you might want Ulex. because the law really matters, saves lives. And what it is, it's this open source legal system, which I've kind of put together. I don't really feel like I did that much special, so don't get too excited about what I did. Let's talk about the future. That's exciting, and what other people are going to do in the future. And so how are you going to use Ulex? You might say, oh, that's an interesting theoretical exercise. It's never going to make a difference in the world. You might be right. I don't think you are. Because remember, this came about because people were like knocking on my door. Tom, solve a problem for us. We have a real world problem. That's where this came from. So that's what it's for. But let me give you my picture of the future of government. And because I think code is code, I believe we can foretell the future of governance by looking at the recent history of computer science. Because code is code, but computer science runs faster. Boom, boom, boom. Things happen much more quickly there because they have technological progress, whereas in the real world with governments, we're stuck with the same old bricks and mortar. So what happened in computer science? Let me take you back to the days of like bell-bottom jeans and shag carpets, 1970, in Bell Labs in New Jersey. They came up with this great idea, which today we look at and we go, well, duh. But in their day, it was a really big deal, and that was the idea of an operating system you could take from one computer and run on another computer. This was Thompson and Ritchie at Bell Labs, 1970. This was Unix, how it got started. Before this, they wrote every operating system from scratch for every new computer, because every new computer was the first one of its type, and so they had to do the software from scratch. And that's the way governments are still basically running. They have one government, one body rules. New government, new body rules. At Bell Labs, they figured out, oh, we don't have to write the software every time. So innovative. That's what we're starting to see in government. Other thing that happened in the 80s and 90s, the advent of personal computing. So now you've got all these computers on desktops, in homes and offices, all over the country, all over the world, and this drives competition. Because now Apple has all these customers, and Microsoft wants some of them, and vice versa. And Linux is out there too, saying, hey, there's another option. And all these operating systems are competing against each other, and so they have to get better. That's where computer science has taken us. That's what's brought us a supercomputer in our pockets, right? Man, we could use that in government. And it's happening, more slowly, but it's happening. Consider Hong Kong. So this is Hong Kong over 34 years, as you know. Basically, Hong Kong for a long time was a little pocket of English common law, really in China, right? Geographically, culturally, linguistically, climate-wise, it was China. But they had, like North and South Korea, a different legal operating system in Hong Kong, and it just really drove a lot of growth. And the Chinese learned from this. They kind of looked over the border under Deng Xiaoping. They said, we'd kind of like to stop starving over here in mainland China. We'd kind of like to be super wealthy like they're all over there in Hong Kong. What are they doing? Well, it turns out they have property rights, and they uphold contracts. You should try that, China. And they're not fools. They did try it, and they instituted special economic zones throughout China. This is Shenzhen, right across the border from Hong Kong. It was one of the first special economic zones in China. So over a shorter period of time, so there's Hong Kong 34 years, here's Shenzhen 25 years, just a burgeoning amount of economic growth. And that's because of the rules. They got better rules. And I've done the math on this. I didn't put it in my book because it would have been like 3 pages of notes. But I will stand on this. If you wanted all the facts, I could unspool them on you. But basically, there are now more people living in China in so-called special zones than people who live in kind of ordinary Chinese law. So it's kind of turned the country inside out. People talk about China taking over Hong Kong. I think the reverse happened in a way. In a way, Hong Kong took over China, much to everyone's benefit, right? The Chinese have been lifted out of poverty. It's the biggest success story of our century so far. Here's Dubai, similar rule over 13 years. In Dubai, they had this problem. We want to bring in the fintech industry to Dubai. But guess what? Sharia law doesn't allow interest. So there's no way London bankers are going to work under those rules. So they brought in English rules. They said in Dubai, in the International Financial Center, the common law of England and Wales is part of our law. So now they're finally starting to do what computer programmers figured out a long time ago. And what are we seeing? We're seeing this is like the PC effect. This is special jurisdictions, the percentage of countries in the world with these special jurisdictions. It's rapidly approaching 100%. It's like an S-shaped curve, actually. Any biologist would tell you, well, this is what you see when you have a new environment that's being populated by a new species. And this is a new species of political animal, and it's taking over the environment. It might never reach 100%, but it's getting pretty close to it because it works. That's a number of special jurisdictions, a percentage. That was the percentage. This is the number of special jurisdictions in the world. And this is the conservative estimate. Some estimates have a 10,000. This puts you up around 4,000. And a similar thing is happening in the United States with common interest communities, like homeowners associations. In a way, these also are little municipal governments. Little municipal governments. And these are popping up everywhere. These are the size of cities now. You might wonder, why is he talking about both Hong Kong and Highland Park, Colorado? Because this is the size of a small city. There's 100,000 people live here in Highland Park, Colorado. It's one of the largest homeowners associations in the United States. It's got schools. Everything you see in this photo is part of the park of Highland Park. Schools, businesses, you see a school bus there, there's churches, there's parks, over 70 miles of roads. They have an 8,000-acre nature preserve, 2 golf courses. I mean, it's just a city, and it's all privately run and operated. Same thing here with Co-op City in the Bronx, over 50,000 residents, solidly middle class. It is somewhat subsidized, so I won't pretend it's like free market. Everything you see there, schools, homes, places of worship, roads, parks, all privately owned and operated. And it's getting bigger. This is Cake City in Saudi Arabia. It's still under construction. This is don't be fooled, this is not really an aerial photograph. It's like a computer-generated thing. This is where it's supposed to end up, about the size of Washington, D.C., about 2 million people, all privately built and operated. Man, in Saudi, do they love this stuff. They're going to go even bigger with NEOM. That's their new project up in the northwest corner of the country. You can see there's Cake in Dubai for reference. And no one's really certain out here. Maybe somebody at NEOM knows what they're doing. The rest of us are kind of standing back and going, what's up there? They talk about having more robots than people. Nobody really knows what they're going to do there, but man, they really like special jurisdictions in Saudi Arabia, and yeah, somebody should call me about their legal system. How about Honduras? That's where I got started on this whole project. All I can say about that right now is they're making progress, but it's a really great system, the Honduran system. They basically have set it up so that they can invite foreign developers into this country and let them bring in a legal system. So in Dubai and probably Saudi, they're basically, the government's picking a legal system. Here, Honduras said, within limits, and there are a lot of limits. They're not going to let you, enslave people. There's all kinds of protections for human rights. It's a very well thought out system. I've traveled to Honduras, the capital, Tegucigalpa, talked with the authors of this system. I really believe their heart's in the right place, and their heads are largely in the right place. They have a great plan. But they're going to let these private developers come and, set up their legal systems and say, it's up to you. You better do it right. It's your money on the line. We'll be watching. You better not abuse any human rights or we'll kick you out. I think there's hope for that. This is seasteading. I've worked on seasteading projects too. Joe Quirk is here. If you see him around, you should say hi to him. He has a wonderful book out with Patri Friedman about seasteading. And you can get it with my book. Joe just told me this morning, kind of like a 2-for-1 special on Amazon. And this is another place where we might have new legal rules. Also, online communities. My current outside client who bought my time is actually building an online community. It's kind of a new field for me, applying this stuff from special jurisdictions to these online communities like these, TESOS and EOS. These are all communities that have conflicts that are going to need adjudication. Are they going to use the law of Canada or the United States? If I were like a German or Spaniard or Chinese or someone from Tajikistan, I would say, no, I don't want that. Ulex is perfect. It's flagged, right? It's not the law of America. It's a kind of a universal set of rules, and it uploads just like that. So I really think these communities could get some benefit out of it. I hope I can help them. So let's wrap it up. So we talked about Ulex. I've told you the why of it. The why is because we need to have better legal rules. The ones that we have out there don't do as well as they could, and it really matters. If we get the rules right, we save lives. What is Ulex? It's this open source legal system. I didn't make up the rules. I just went out and kind of noticed, hey, there's these rules sitting there. Somebody should tell the world about this. I had to kind of organize them and put them in a nice, neat little basket, but honestly, folks, it wasn't rocket science. Don't give me too much credit. More exciting than that, its origins would be where it could take us. It could help us have better systems of governance, and I think that would be great because I'm not that thrilled with how things are working now. So that's Ulex. I want to thank you for listening and invite you to check out my book, Your Next Government, if you want to learn more. Thank you.